And now we are starting with a presentation of Екатерини Мициу from Vienna about prosopography, GIS, and networks of the 13th century, new tools and methods. Okay.
First of all, thank you for having me in your conference. I'm honored to be able to join you. I will try to share my screen. I hope you can you see my
Yes.
PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
I will now turn it to full screen so that you can see the whole slides, the entire slides. As the title of my presentation says, I'm going to present some recent developments in issues related to the 13th century, more specific, the Byzantine Empire. The main focus will be on prosopography and networks and less on GIS. I will explain why is that, of the 13th century, where I will speak about how we have started to use new tools and methods in order to understand the period. If I speak too fast, or if you have any questions, something that you don't understand, please write it in the chat, or you can even stop me during the presentation. I can explain something that perhaps is not clear. The period I'm dealing with is the period after the Fourth Crusade, after the capture of Constantinople by the soldiers of the Fourth Crusade, and the consequences of this paramount event, of this important event, not only for the Byzantine Empire, but for the entire Eastern Mediterranean, even for regions in Black Sea and beyond. You see here on the map a map which tries to depict the fragmentation, the political fragmentation after 1204. You see the various polities, small or larger states, that were formed as a result. We have the Latin states in the Eastern Mediterranean. Anyway, we had the Crusader states in the Near East after the First Crusade, already at the end of the 11th century. Now we see that Latin states were formed in the regions where before the Fourth Crusade, in regions which were Byzantine. There is a Latin Empire with a capital Constantinople, but at the same time there are other smaller states like Venetian colonies, like the state of the Velarduan in Peloponnese, the Negropode is another Latin polity as well. And at the same time, one has some powers that still remain on the political era, like the Sultanate of Iconium and other powers on the Balkan, the Kingdom of Hungary. And the important element for those who are dealing with the Byzantine Empire is the formation of three successor states. We call them the three Greek successor states. Refugees or local powers in three different regions were able to create three states which persevered and tried to recapture Constantinople. That was the major aim of all these three Greek states. One of the most important, perhaps the most important due to the results, was the Empire of Nicaea in Asia Minor. Its center was the city of Nicaea, today Iznik, And this was the state that managed to reconquer Constantinople almost 57 years after the Fourth Crusade. The second one was the state of Epirus in Western Greece, which at some point was able to recapture even Thessaloniki and to be moving forward, but still was stopped by the Bulgarians. The third Greek state was the one in Trapezunt, which at the beginning had the same hopes to reconquer Constantinople, but soon, or some years later, stopped this. It became obvious that it will not be possible for Trapezunt to remain in the game of this confrontation with the Latin Empire of Constantinople. The Empire of Nicaea had three major rulers. The first one was Theodore I, Laskaris, and that's why it's called as well the Laskarite period, because the family, the dynastic, the ruling family is the one around Theodore I Laskaris. Then the second was his son-in-law, John III, Doukas Vatazis, who was the most successful from the military point of view. During his reign, many regions were reconquered, and he was able to expand the state on the Balkans as well. And the third one was Theodore II Laskaris, who ruled for around 4 years, but he was still successful military, but also he was a great scholar. He has produced many literary works. And this is the framework of the historical framework of my presentation. This period has been studied in various ways. The major monograph on the topic is of Michael Angold, who spoke about a government in exile, but many other studies as well have dealt with the Empire of Nicaea. I started working on the Laskarite period during my PhD back at the beginning of 2000. My dissertation was finished in 2006. And you see that I was focusing on economy and ideology of the state. Tried to create as well some maps. Perhaps you can see here how I tried to create a map at the period where there was no Google Maps or something similar. And as a student back then, I tried to do my best to locate places in Asia Minor and to put them on a map. And at the same time, I was trying to through the index, to have people mentioned in the sources of the period. All this in a period where, as I said, there was no, not even Google Earth, Google Maps. You couldn't really deal with these questions if you were a single PhD student. You had to ask a geographer, and you know, it was a little bit complicated back then. In the meantime, many things have changed, and in a good way. In the humanities, we speak about a digital turn. That means after a linguistic turn, we have many turns in humanities, and we like to use this word, which means like a new phase in understanding our sources, to analyze our sources. For the period I'm working in, the Laskarite period, the first half of the 13th century, perhaps it's easier to put it in your minds this way, the first half of the 13th century in the Eastern Mediterranean. My first effort to apply new digital tools for understanding the period were by using the so-called social network analysis. And you know, or in everyday life, we speak about networks, we speak about social media that actually are networks on the web, huge networks which are a part of the network analysis, which started from the natural sciences, but also from sociology. Sociology used already at the beginning of the century, around 1920s, 1930s, they tried to understand social relationship on the basis of connections between individuals. You see here definition of a network and how it is understood in this theory. It is not identical with what everyday people understand with networks. We use the word network very, very often. But in this theory, it has a specific understanding, a specific meaning, and it has specific parameters, how we use it and how we analyze and how we quantify. The aim of the network analysis is to understand interconnectivity, connections between individuals, places, institutions, organizations, everything that has a relational, there is a relation type of connection between these objects, between these persons, between these groups, even between manuscripts. If you could create a network of manuscripts and the owners and how these manuscripts travel around the space and through time. On the other hand, we have tried to apply the GIS in an effort to understand the space, not only the Byzantine space, but also the space generally in the historical sources. And this can happen with the use of softwares like Quantum GIS, which anyone can download and use. It's a little bit difficult to understand, but in a way you can create your own maps in a very, very nice way. And here you see also a combination of networks on this depiction on the left, on the upper left, a combination of networks put on space. This is, you may know this Orbis page where you can follow the Roman road system. And if you can calculate how many days you would need, you would have needed in the Roman Empire to move from Rome, let's say, to Athens. And if you create a network from these connections, you can have this result. So there is a combination, a possible combination between networks and GIS. And nowadays, with the very, very developed software, this became more easily done. An example on a historical person, this is the social network of Metropolitan Simeon of Alania on the Black Sea. And we are in the 14th century, I just wanted to give you an example. And his brother, so we have the network of this Metropolitan, who had, it was a scandal around his person and about his brother, with many conflicts with the Patriarchate of Constantinople, many trips back and forth. And you see how this Metropolitan was able to position himself between, on the one hand, the Patriarchate, the Orthodox Church, but at the same time with the Golden Horde. You see that this network depicts with different color the ties of kinship, so you can to have a specific typology of relations. Kinship, support, here you see it in green. Appellation, if you approach somebody and you send a letter, and this is in yellow. If there is a conflict between individuals, you can have it in black or in another color. The selection of colors should not distract your concentration. It's just for visualization reasons. Subordination, professional association, his connection, for example, to the Patriarchate are in blue. And if there are other qualities, other relations that we know that exist, but we are not sure about it, we can select another color. You see, this is a network of the Metropolitan of Alania, who could play between two power centers. On the other hand, the Patriarchate of Constantinople, and the other hand with the Golden Horde. And you can see now a map which tries to depict as well to put this case of Alania on the geographical space, and to demonstrate the connections of Alania, but also the other another important city, Tana or Azad, very close to Alania, and to see how these regions were connected also to Constantinople, but also in other places, based on the documents that we have from the Patriarchal Register of Constantinople. These are in the yellow lines, and the red lines depict the connections of Tanais based on some documents of Italian merchants in the region. This is only to give you an example of how these new tools can allow you to understand the networks of individuals, but also networks and connectivity of places, of specific cities in a specific time, based certainly on the material you have from the sources, like documents from the church, or your material from Phoenician or Genoese merchants in the who were active in the Black Sea in the 14th century. For the first half of the 13th century, we have cartularies, which is a main source of the, in our effort to understand the peasant society in Asia Minor at the beginning of the 13th century. You see here this cartulary. This is a document, this is a codex from the region of Smyrna, today Izmir, in Western Asia Minor. And you see also the conditions, the manuscript has suffered damages and so on. And now a new edition has been prepared. I'm working to finalize the edition that another colleague has already prepared, but unfortunately died before publishing the edition. But I'm working on finalizing his work. This is a rich documentary evidence. And on the basis of only some of the material that's included in this cartulary, I started to analyze networks of peasant families in a specific village. You can see the village on the north of, if we go back to the map, on the north of Smyrna, it is so-called Mila or Vari. I hope you can see it on the map. And on the base of the information we have around this village, I was, and this is only from the Practicon, this is from a register of the peasant families belonging to the monastery of Lemvos. And you see how this is organized around clusters of family, but at the same time we have the village of Vari in the center, because they are all interconnected through their presence to a specific geographical place. In another effort, I tried to understand networks of women, and more precisely the networks of empresses. A prominent empress in the period was the wife of John III and daughter of Theodore I, so she was a princess married to the next emperor of the Laskarite era. And you see that in the center we have Irene Laskarina. This type of network is called ego network, because we are focusing on one node. Node is one individual or one person or one actor in this network. So I'm focusing on her, so I create her network. I don't create the entire network of the imperial family, let's say, but I'm focusing on her. And you see that there are individuals connected to her through various types of connections, especially kinship or other. They were working for her, or they had a correspondence with her. With red line, the red lines depict connections of kinship. Something similar I tried to do also for another Laskarite princess, the Evdokia Laskarina and her daughter Vatadza, who left Byzantium. Evdokia Laskarina left the Byzantine Empire around 1261-62. He was married to a Genoese and he moved to the west. And from Genoa later on, after the death of her husband, she moved to Spain, to Aragon, and she had a daughter there, many children there. One of her children was had the interesting name Vatadza. It's probably due to her grandfather, great-grandfather, John III Vatadzis. And these two women, two Laskarite princesses, were able to establish themselves not only in Italy, but also in Spain. And Batazo was a very influential person, able to move from various courts, from Aragon to Castile to Portugal. And she never forgot her Lascarid background. And here you see also her grave with a double eagle, the symbol of the Byzantine Empire. Another effort from my part was to understand networks of power, of imperial power, based on the studies, the pioneer study was dedicated to the family of Medici, and they tried to understand how the family of Medici were able to establish themselves as important family in Florence. And you see also the visualization back then was a little more simple, but what became obvious was that the Medici was a part of the Medici power was based on her role as brokers. They connected parts of a broader network that otherwise would have left unconnected. So they were like a broker. What the word broker in English means is like he or the family connects parts of a broader network with other parts of the network, which otherwise would not have found a way to get closer. And this was the role that made the Medici one key player in the politics of France, the 14th century. There have been, therefore, many studies based on this example followed, and the idea has moved forward. And for the case of the Lascarid period, I tried to create the supportive network of Theodore I, and you see how many families were aristocratic families were supported Theodore I. And if we apply some of the methodologies also of the social network analysis, we can detect subgroups, clusters as they call, in this broader network that for individuals or actors that are closely related to each other than to other actors of this network. Similarly, I tried to apply the same on to the other Greek state, Epirus, in the western Greece. But you see here, the number of families is really small. And this is due to the lack of sources. We have not the abundance of sources that we have for the Empire of Nicaea at the beginning, at the first years of the rule in Epirus. But later on, with the second ruler in Epirus, you see that the information becomes more abundant, and you can see also here the support of various families in Greece that supported the family of Agelos. Theodore Agelos was the one who was able to recapture Thessaloniki from the Latins. And this was some efforts to see the period, to see the developments from this perspective of the digital humanities, and more specific with the help of network analysis. One key problem, one major problem was already, I was able to see this problem already back when I was writing my dissertation. There was no prosopographical tool for the period. Whenever somebody was looking information about an individual, there was nothing. You had to just search in the secondary literature, and you were happy if you could find some more detailed information. There were some genealogy books, publications, like the one about the genealogy of the Paleologi or the Duce, prominent Byzantine aristocratic families, but still they were out of date and with many problems. And for example, the peasants in Asia Minor from the cartulary were not easy to be found because they are genealogy of the prominent families, not of the peasants. And this made the necessity of a database, of a prosopography, first of all, And then of a database, more obvious to me at least, that we need this tool. We need the prosopography of the first half of the 13th century for this region. And to give you an example, or to give you an idea of how many, we have prosopographies for the Byzantine era, we have prosopographies for various periods for the later Roman Empire. I think now they will going to have it also in a digital form. They are preparing a digital form of the prosopography of the later Roman Empire. There is also now also online the prosopography of the Middle Byzantine period. This is in German. Sometimes make the life of scholars difficult, but at least it's online and you can always look there. So, and it covers the Middle Byzantine period from the middle of the 9th century at the beginning of the 11th century. The next prosopographical tool is the prosopography of the Byzantine world in England. And this is also online, but still not complete. It is a work also on progress. The only one prosopography of very close to our period, actually it follows our period, is the prosopographical lexicon of the Paleologian era. I translate the German title you see on the down on the bottom. This is only in print form, but still it covers the period from 1258 to the fall of Constantinople, and it is completed. 2001 was the last volume. There are PDFs of the publication. You can use it in German. This can be difficult, but you can always use Google Translator and so on. And you can find your way and to navigate in this project, which was a huge project in Vienna. And one of the projects that the founder of Byzantine Studies in Vienna, Herbert Huger, has initiated, and it was finalized. But you see, there is something missing. We have the period until the end of the 12th century, then we have the second half of the 13th century, but you see this problem. We don't have prosopography for the first half of the 13th century. But as I always say, keep calm, don't worry, and in the future, when it will be finished, you can use plus. This is a prosopography of the Laskarit period, which I initiated around 2018, in order to create a tool for the prosopography of the period. And I will present some of the elements this prosopography contains. It is based on a database system called Open Atlas, which can be used not only for historical, but also for archaeological evidence. Actually, one of the initiators of the founder, Stefan Eichert, is an archaeologist, whereas Alexander Watziger, you see his name here, he is the one from the point of view of informatics. He is the one who programs the various elements. You can visit the homepage of Open Atlas. You can even play around. There is a demo version, and you can use the demo version to see how you can enter data in this database. On the image demonstrates how we start from the medieval source. We move to the process of entering the data, creating the networks, because it's a relational database, and it gives the opportunity to create the network between the persons and groups that are included in this prosopography while you are entering the data. And this is an open source tool, open access. If you are you have informatics skills, you can even download it and have it on your computer and work with it on your own. But the problem is, if there are always updates, almost once a month, this system is updated and the new version is coming out. So the new elements, perhaps you will miss the new elements. So it's always nice to keep in touch with Alexander Watziger, who is always very friendly and can help you in all your questions. So this is a database system that we are use in Vienna, but also in projects that are funded even from the EU, European Union. And it demonstrates how powerful this tool is. Let me show you how the sources that we have and how my questions are related to this tool and how I apply the elements that I find in my sources to the database system. Let's start from the one important category, as I told you, is this cartulary, another image here. And you see the document, the signature at the beginning, and so on. Here on the right, you see how many documents you have and typology of the documents we have. So we have to extract the information on our own. They are not digitalized, the cartulary. So it's a hard work to find each individual and enter each actor then to the prosopographical database. Another typology includes letters. There are many letters in this period. As I told you, Theodore II was a great scholar. He wrote also letters. He has left these letters and we have them. And he mentions many persons in these letters. But at the same time, we have letters also from Western rulers, right, like Frederick II Hohenstaufen, written in Greek and sent to the Laskarid Emperor. So we take that also into consideration. Here is the interface of the database. So here you can enter the name and other data related to a person. And on the right, you can see what is hidden on the left. For example, the prosopographical identifier. Then you can, if there is a mention of the same individual in another prosopographical study or database, you can enter also their identifier there. And you can give an approximate date if you don't know exactly. So you know a person lived between 1250 and 1262, but you cannot define it exactly. So you have the possibility to expand to give this approximate dates. You can give a description, what we know about this individual, and so on. Born in, died in, and this is the place that you have to enter. Here you have an example of a metropolitan of Adrianople, today Edirne, and the information that we have and the information that we have taken from the sources that we have for this specific period. This individual appears later on because he becomes patriarch, but these are the information that we have for his, let's say, for this his life in the first half of the 13th century. An actor is being defined not only as an individual in the database, but also as a group. You can have a group of individuals, and I will give you an example for that. You see here on the bottom that the metropolis of Adrianople or the Patriarchate of Constantinople can be regarded as a node, as an actor in prosopography, but it's not a person, it's a group. It's defined here as a group. And you see that this metropolitan is connected to these two groups, at first the metropolis of Adrianople and later on the Patriarchate of Constantinople. But another connection of this individual is related to the events, where he participated. He participated in a meeting of the synod. He participated perhaps in a meeting of a local synod in Edirne, or he was sent an ambassador somewhere. So this is an event, and we connect him to a specific event as well. This emphasis on events is based also on the back end of this Open Atlas tool. So it's something that is a part of the ontology of the Open Atlas tool as well. You can create the map of the individuals, the map with places where these individuals were present and mentioned in the sources is also created at the moment you enter a place of residence, a place of birth, a place of death, or a place, an event took place there. And you can always have an overview of your map any time. Here you enter a place, let's say Nikia is Nick, or you can enter whatever place is needed for your database. If there is a reference in the GeoNames, which is an international georeference page, and it's helpful to have this references there whenever you can and you can apply them for places that are not certainly located. This can be very tricky, but you can always give also a date of this place, when it's first mentioned, when it's last mentioned, and so on. And you can have your map, which is important whenever you want to connect individuals with places. And the Open Atlas tool, and also this is depicted also in the class prosopographical database, allows you to even frame the city. If you know the exact frame, the exact dimensions of the city, you can even mark it on the map. For the city of Iznik is easy because we have the city walls still standing, and we know the dimensions of the medieval city of Nicaea. So we can have it on the map, and you see on the description we have written place of the Ecumenical Councils, later headquarter of a theme, the presence then of the Seljuks, and later on the residence of the Laskarid dynasty. So you give a little bit information about this city. You can enter the source which gives you the information you have just entered in your database, and this is a contrast to another type. What we have, the reference, the source is a medieval source. The reference is a list of the secondary literature, modern literature related to the information which actually is given in the database. There is a category called types. Here you see that you can create economical, kinship, political, social types of connections between an actor, the actor-actor relation, as you see it. But if you think that you need another type of connection, let's say cultural connection, or linguistical connection, or another type of connection which perhaps is interesting for you, or you need it for your database, is something that you can do on your own without the help of Alex Watzinger in this. But there are some elements that you cannot do it on your own, and then you have to ask to be creative. But generally, it's a flexible tool, and you can set apart things that you don't need to use, and to add or customize elements that are more important for your database. Because, as I said, this Open Atlas is being used also for other projects which were not historical, they were not prosopographical.
Excuse me for interruption. Yes. We are limited in.
Yes, I will move very fast. I don't. I think here I wanted to show you that this is a network that has been reproduced from the database itself, so you don't need to do any hard work. The database itself creates the network that comes up from the relations that you have created by entering your data. And I'm giving you an example how hard this work is. Before that, we had to take, let's say, an entry in the PLP, the Prosopographical Lexicon of the Paleologian period. We had to mark the relations, the individuals, and so on, to go then to the software of the network analysis, and to enter person by person, person by person, and then create the connections. This is another procedure to mark the connections between individuals. In order to have this type of networks, this is a huge network. Let's say you have 2,000 individuals. It's really a huge work that you have to do. But with the database, you have already the persons, the actors, and the networks are being created. And then what you can do is you extract the data of the prosopographical database. They are already in a digital form. You go to your other software for network analysis or GIS, and you work further in more specialized software and more specialized tools. The one is with network Aura. This is the tool that we use for social network analysis, and the other one is created with Quantum GIS, if you want to download them as well. They are both still free to download. There is a question what you do when you have individuals that are not mentioned in the written sources, like in this case, this skeletons found in the theater of Iznik. They were in Iznik and they are dated in the 13th century. So this is archaeological evidence, this is anthropological evidence. But as I said, this type of material have been used in archaeological projects like the one called Thanatos, which with a specific focus on graves in Central Europe. And this is an easy thing to do as well also for our skeletons from Nicaea. I wanted only to mention that there was a conference in late May with the title Bridging the Gap, where people working on the prosopography of the 13th century came together and discussed issues related to these new approaches. And this is my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Коллеги, у кого-то вопросы возникли по докладу? У нас, наверное, не очень большие.
Yes, I have one little question about what do you think about combining of electronic edition with all that fantastic tools and paper one with different visual presentation of results? How to combine it? Or
maybe a digital edition of text, you mean?
Not text, but the result of your investigation researches.
Yes, this will be, when it's finished, it's going to be open access so that everybody can use it. This is my purpose. Mm-hmm. But it can always create a PDF, let's say it so, to create a printed version at a specific time. Let's say I finish this database in 2 or 3 years or 5 years. I can say, please create now a PDF of the data that ended until today. And you can have a printed version of the database at this point. But this is something that you can always change. So you still enter your correct data, and then you can have another printing version. So let's say second and revised edition or something.
Yes, yes.
This is something. This is the point with the databases.
Mm-hmm.
It's flexible. You can change it. You can adapt it. And another point which I didn't mention is that it can be. It survives. It doesn't mean that after 20 years you will not find the database. The Austrian Center for Digital Humanities and the Academy of Sciences in Vienna have a specific center focusing on digital humanities or on digital aspects of research, and they have their own plan to give capacity and to save this project. So they are under permanent observation, and they will not get lost after a couple of years.
Yes.
Because this is but as I said, if you have created a printed version, or if you have extracted your data in a digital form, in HTML or in another type of program language, you can in a way recreate even if something gets lost, you can always come back to the previous results. So it's something that will not get lost. And you can have, as I said, an online version and a printed version if you want. Let's say you want to present to your funding or to your boss, let's say, or to the university, you want to present something and they want it printed. You can print it. You can give them, please take now the 400 pages. And this is printed like a PDF. Yes, yes, this is possible. Yes, and I don't know if there is, even if you the thing is, when you have it in digital form, you can connect also but I thought at the beginning you spoke about digital editions. Let's say you have digitally edited the text online. It's easy to connect digital projects to each other. And this is possible also with the Open Atlas, to take data from there, to bring them down. But yes, this is another question, sorry.
Yes, I understand. But thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you. I hope I didn't speak too fast. If you have any question, I will put probably my PowerPoint presentation in Academia Edu if you want to download it. And if you have any questions, please you can write to me, or
yes, it will be
your disposal. Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that I cannot speak Russian, otherwise I would have said
okay.
Sorry for that.
Ну, если вопросов нет, I have a short question. I'm curious about software and technical solutions. First, it's not a question, but note, Quantum GIS, it's a deprecated name. Now it's called QGIS, not Quantum. And the question is, what about, you mentioned SQL database. What database specifically you are using? PostgreSQL, MySQL, what?
I think it's MySQL, based on the I don't know all the exact all the technical elements behind it. I think it's MySQL, and yes, it's MySQL. If I'm not wrong, yeah, I think it's MySQL. And about Quantum, I know you've started using it back some years, and I stayed with the Quantum GIS name. I like it to say.
Well, it's old name.
Yes, yes, you know, like historians, we like the old and we like the past a little bit. So I like to call it Quantum GIS. So.
Okay, if you like. Okay, now we are starting the next presentation.